Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to all of our speakers in the afternoon session. We did have a great conversation in the chat that started happening. And in particular, so let's see who's here. So Andrew's here, Deb's still here. Jen Hammock is still here from before. Claire is here. So we have, and I believe, and Abby, I believe, is still here. So a lot of folks to answer questions. And one came up that I'm going to toss out to our panelists. And that is particularly some people started feeling overwhelmed. That there's like portals here, portals there, there's Discover Life, there's GBIF, there's Data One, there's all these repositories. How do they talk to each other? Do they talk to each other? And what would a data lifecycle or data process be potentially for a bee monitoring data set? Anybody want to jump in?
Sure, I'll give it a try to start. So the way I like to think about the different things that were talked about today is, for instance, GBIF, you can pull out observation level extractions out of there. So you can do like I just want to know what's in Texas, or I just want these bees, just those observations, and it's going to come from over 80,000 data sets. So that's a bit different than, for instance, Data One, where you're going to need to go to each data set and download each of those 80,000 data sets individually in order to get out the observations that you're looking for. And then the way I like to think about Symbiota, and obviously Andrew can talk about it better, that's a data management. So GBIF is not going to help you with managing your data. So Symbiota helps you with actually managing your data. And so those are just some of the distinctions I think of personally.
All right, anybody else want to try?
I'll jump in. I think I'm going to add more fuel to the fire, not necessarily clarifying things, but think when you start dipping your toe in the water of data sharing and you start learning about what these different initiatives are, you quickly learn a few key players, and then you begin to learn sort of your realm of how your data fits into that bigger. And then when you come to an event like this, you start seeing all these other options. So first of all, don't panic. Don't panic. And keep coming back and asking if you don't understand. I mean, it is a lot to take in and absorb. I myself am still trying to understand exactly the Catalog of Life network, which we haven't even talked about yet or mentioned, and understand how data gets from one backbone taxonomy into another, or gets, it's a lot to try and understand. So keep asking us for diagrams. I think that's great. Keep asking us for workflow. Understand that part of also what we're saying is when you make your data available in a standard format for some of these, you're making your data publicly available and other places will grab it. The comment in the chat that popped up and said, oh, yay, there's my data, right? And so your data are being discovered in networks that you perhaps didn't realize was even there yourself. Sorry, go ahead, Katja.
I also want to mention that Dave Viglis is here too from Data One.
Yep.
But Andrew, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about how does Symbiota fit into this ecosystem with GBIF and iDigBio?
Yeah, so sure, and I think I might echo a little bit to start with what Deb said, is that the first step is getting your data somewhere, right? And it is confusing, and there's a lot of places to put your data, and you want to get it everywhere, but put it somewhere first, and then start building those connections, right? And so Symbiota, yeah, I kind of mentioned it's maybe this mid-tier. It's a good place if you don't already have an institutional database that you're working out of. If you're not paying for another collections management software or something, it's a great place perhaps to start, and then you could always move your data somewhere else if that's right for you. But it also serves as a publication platform. So once you put your data there to manage it, you know, with a click of a few buttons and a quick email to GBIF, your data are on GBIF. iDigBio will come and harvest your data straight to their portal. So all of a sudden your data are at least in those two major players. And then you can push them to other Symbiota portals that might be specific to a particular community as well. So that starts to answer it at least.
So with that, I'd like to actually talk to Claire about this too, Claire Maffei, about I have data on a Symbiota portal. I export that data via Darwin Core Archive to GBIF and iDigBio, but I'd like to make sure that it gets on Discover Life as well, and make it more broadly available. What is the process there for having the data available onto Discover Life?
So I don't see my video popping up, so I'm sorry about that if my computer is being wonky. Right, so the easiest way is to email us. Basically, it's a matter of a CSV. As you saw, there's really does not matter what your fields are. You know, the AMH data is basically just John Asher's name and the centroid, and but ideally, you know, you want things mapped to a location. So an ID and a lat long and your name could be all you want to share. Or if you want to share all of that associated data and people can click on your points or click on the, you know, view all of that information, we will just, yeah, it's literally just a CSV that we can post there. And I can't remember if I said it in the talk, but you can also then, that is all yours. So you'll be able to, if you ever want to say, oh, can we delete that? Or, oh, I added a whole bunch, or for whatever reason, that is completely in your control. It's a very simple upload removal thing. It's not publishing in the way of these other so the other portals that we've talked about.
Yeah, it serves a different aspect in the community, you know?
Yeah, it's very much just for visualization.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other comments from our panelists about this ecosystem of data and portals, and where to get started, and how it all works together?
Let's see. Well, first I want to read what Dave wrote. Get your data
Hey.
into a repository. Yeah, sorry,
Hey,
Dave, there you are.
It's Dave. Hey, yeah,
Dave?
I'm standing in for Amber. And I'll just mention that a lot of these aggregators are all working together in various levels to promote access to this information. There's no, as far as I can tell, there's no competition, someone trying to win. We're all got the same goal of promoting access to these important resources. And so the really important thing is to actually get your data into a repository, ideally one that has some sustainability background and is promoting community standards. And then it will eventually appear in these various other aggregators. You'll get promoted for citations, you'll be able to gather metrics and all that sort of useful information just emerges.
Right. Yeah,
Well said, Dave. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
well said. And
Um,
you know, where to submit data, first, the reasons might be what's happening at your institution, the project that you're on, what did you say in your data management plan, what other people that are working or surveying for bees in the same area, what are they doing? So there's a lot of reasons why to start with one particular place or another.
Yeah. And I think this is why I said, start learning in your realm that you're connected to, what Katja just said. That's kind of where, and then you begin to get how the pieces fit.
But it's really, you know, I hear from the group, and so one of the outcomes from this workshop is that we want to take your comments that are in the chat and that you've been talking about, and to try and help provide some of those guidelines and further information. So it's really great that people have been talking about this in the chat.
Yeah, you reminded me there's an effort to revisit the, iDigBio has a list of glossary of terms, like who is who, what's what. And there's a move at Tadwig to sort of revisit that and build one at the Biodiversity Information Standards place, which would be a place to figure out some of the answers to somebody. Who is this? What is this project? What does it do? On another conversation linked to what you said earlier, Katja, that we'll take on at some point during this meeting, and it is the one about how do we make sure our data sets are linked? If we're all in this network and we're all collecting native bee data, how do we make sure our data find each other? And that conversation is a broader one that affects other groups besides this kind of monitoring. For those of you who want to dive down kind of where that conversation goes, you can read that at some point. It's by no means, it's a conversation. It's not like when you read it, you're going to have the answer, but you're going to understand more of the pieces, parts about what do we need to do to make sure if we're each collecting data on our own, what are our options for being able to aggregate that information?
Any other questions? I lost track. The chat was so active. I've lost track of what's been going on. Jen, you.
I thought Jose Russo had a good one a couple of minutes ago about quality control within fields and how that's treated among different. If Jose wants to jump in, she can maybe articulate it better.
You're doing good. I was just curious. People upload data in many different places, different portals, and I feel some portals might require some quality control. So for example, species name without typos or things like that, while others might not require any quality control of the data being uploaded. Do you have information about that?
Yes. So quality control, I think many of the people on the panel can talk about how it's done within portals and how it's done within communities. Deb, I see your hand is raised.
I think it's important to remember that it's a work in progress. So right now, if you get your data to IDIG-Bio, if you get your data to GBIF, and I believe this is, somebody here correct me if I get this wrong now. In the past, they did data quality checks on your data coming in, but they each did their own data quality pass. So for example, GBIF might discover that you have latitude and longitude values flipped, and IDIG-Bio might discover the same problems in your data set. However, what they call that CSV file that they make available to you might have a different name. And then you have to open up that file and go, oh, this is the same thing that I got from GBIF about the same records. Maybe it's in a different order. And then you have to sit there and go through that. And you're like, why can't they just give me one because they pulled the same data, and why can't they run the same data checks? That kind of conversation is going on and happening, that kind of standardization idea where the large portals at Atlas of Living Australia, IDIG-Bio, GBIF, others, talking to each other about running the data, like I showed in my slide, through one pipeline for the data quality checks so that your data, you don't have to go back and forth. The other thing I would say we're doing on the collections management and taxonomy workbench that I work on, TaxonWorks, we have a couple of things built in. We have Gnomon, which is software that builds the rules for nomenclature into the software to help ensure that you've got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed and your names meet the nomenclature standards. The other thing we do is we pull the GBIF data quality feedback back into our local collection management software. And we show you your record inside our system, and we show you what GBIF shows for that record. So we're trying to make it easier for you to keep up and benefit from what aggregators can do to help you with your data quality.
So many of the different data portals have means to provide feedback to the providers based on their opinions about the data within the portal. Jen, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, this is sort of a riff on what Deb was saying about tools that people use at these data hubs for analyzing incoming data. They do also those tools tend to proliferate if they're effective. So something like processing an incoming scientific name, for example, that's something that many portals have to deal with. So we do have, over time, we have converged on similar tools, especially where the software is open source and can be easily shared. So you should come to expect as a data creator that the various places that you are invited to send your data should resemble one another in a lot of these data quality tool setups anyway.
So for some, like GBIF, there is feedback for the record set providers about things like flipped coordinates, taxon names, many other things. But Andrew, do you want to speak for a second about the data quality tools in Symbiota for
Sure.
quality control?
Yeah, and I'm, you know, taxonomic data are always messy, and there's a lot of sides to it, right? Because sometimes it's you're working on a new species description, and that's not going to meet anybody's taxonomy currently, but that's probably really good information to have on your thing, you know, on your records. But on the other hand, you have old and outdated names that some people are using, and taxon codes that you might be using in the field where, well, maybe those aren't as good, right? So, but so Symbiota tries to be flexible to let you input the data however you have it, and we'll try to take it. But there are a lot of cleaning tools within Symbiota portals to map it to existing names and to see what you have, what doesn't match to family, what doesn't match to genus, and where you can try to find those names and pull them into the portal, just like many other platforms have available.
And Chuck Harp from SCAN is here too, and he says SCAN, being another kind of another Symbiota portal, has several cleaning tools, including duplicate entry number, lat long errors, country names misspelled. So I think of the portals as a way of helping me make my data better. It helps me integrate data sets because my data sets come from lots of different places and lots of different surveys. And it also provides these tools that by myself would take quite a bit of coding or other ways to be able to do those data validations. Okay, so Jort would like to know, what's the difference between cleaning and reinterpreting or translation?
Good question. Anybody else want to tackle it? I'm happy to try, but if somebody other voice might want to weigh in.
I would think of maybe cleaning as the data kind of manager doing it to your own data set, right? That's a round of trying to improve the quality of your own data versus, you know, reinterpreting or translating. You're not necessarily trying to go back and fix the primary level data. You're really trying to integrate those data streams together into one thing. But that might be a really I don't know, that's my broad thought of it, but I think they're very similar skills, right? And it's very hard to integrate these data that come from different places and try to put them together.
I think for me, the difference would be, is it an assertion? So one thing, is it made by a machine or a human? So that's one difference. The other is it something like where it's very unambiguous that the date is not possible? For example, if it says like the month is 31, then clearly something is very wrong because we don't have 31 months. Reinterpreting or translation or sort of inferring. So GBIF makes that very clear, right? In theirs, they make clear that they make a remark and say, we deduce that we think this is the case, but you could come back and say, no, I really did mean what I put there, right? Because only you know your original data. So some things are, I think the trick I want to add to Jort's question is, how do we make it possible for people to improve the data on their end? This concept, some of you will hear more about round tripping. How can we make it possible for you to make it easier to use the assertions? When you put your data out there, as Katja pointed out, and it gets repackaged, you learn things about your data that you either can't see inside your own data milieu, inside your own realm, or it would be very difficult. So but making use of that locally can be challenging. So Jort, I hope we answered at least some of your question.
We have about 5 more minutes. Is there anything else you would like to ask the panelists, or any burning thoughts from the panelists?
Tom has an question.
Did I miss something in the chat?
Oops. It's related to what we were just saying. Tom, I think it depends on your own workflow. And if you're working collaboratively, your data, like you may be working on it collaboratively in the first place. In TaxonWorks, we encourage a collaborative effort. So you are working on your data, but you're working on it sort of together. When it goes out the door, it does definitely get, but I see your point. Clean from an outside perspective, maybe as the next step. And see why you would think that.
Well, so on Thursday, we have a whole nother day of this to learn more about data, workflows, reproducibility, data sharing, iNaturalist. Yeah, it continues to be jam-packed on Thursday.